What I wanted to do this evening is I wanted to go back again a little bit and try and explain from my perspective where Revelation is coming from. Because if you remember, what we said was that we need to do which book first before we were going to do Revelation?
Daniel.
Daniel. And did we do Daniel?
Yes.
We did do Daniel.
In detail.
We did all 12 chapters of Daniel, one after the other. And what I wanted to do this evening is show you why we said that Daniel is so critical to help understand Revelation. Is that okay? So that's really what tonight's about. And in so doing, I think it might help because it will give us an overview, I think, of what Revelation is really getting at. So we're not going to be delving into all the symbology of Revelation tonight. I'm trying to give you an overall picture as to what Revelation covers from a history perspective, if that makes sense. So I've called this Understanding the Book of Revelation. So first thing is that if you have a look in Revelation chapter 1, it says it's the revelation of Jesus Christ. But what's the word if we read it in the Greek? It wouldn't say revelation. It's on the screen. See, the answer's always there if you just...
Oh, I can see
You see it now?
Apocalypse,
It's
yeah.
apocalypse. That's right.
Yeah.
So, and the reason you might say, well, hold on, why does it say Greek? Why does it say apocalypse in the Greek? But we don't read the word apocalypse, we read the word revelation. Good question. And that is simply because the Greek word apocalypse, and I've put it down the bottom there, means something that's been revealed, something that's been disclosed, making something visible, or making something known that wasn't known before. And that's why when the people were translating the Greek, which the New Testament's written in, into English, they thought, if we call this the Book of Apocalypse, people go, we've never heard of apocalypse. What's apocalypse? So they thought, well, what's another word that we could use that's got a similar meaning to apocalypse in the Greek? And they thought, well, it's being revealed, something's being revealed, so we'll call it revelation, because if there's a revelation, if you look at the dictionary definition of revelation, it's something that's being revealed to somebody. Does that make sense? Some people, when, I've listened to quite a few talks about on Revelation, and some people insist on calling it the apocalypse. They won't ever use the word revelation. They'll say, I'm going to do a talk on the apocalypse. And people go, turn to Apocalypse chapter 1. And people go, well, where's that then? Where's Apocalypse chapter 1? So that's what it is. But interestingly, if you look in verse 1 of Revelation chapter 1, it's the revelation or the revealing or the making visible of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him. So the order is God revealed all of this stuff to Jesus. And then it says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show to his servants things which must shortly come to pass. So the order is God gives it to Jesus, Jesus gives it to his servants, and we know which servant he gave it to, because the servant he gave it to was who?
John.
John. We know that because it says at the end of verse 1, he sent it by his angel to his servant John. So actually, there's an angel involved. So you've got God who gives it to Jesus, Jesus who gives it to an angel, and the angel gives it to John. What does John do with it? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess essentially the letters would have been written out and taken around the 7 churches originally. And when all the rest of it was written up, maybe it went round as a package and there was, it was all written up. And so maybe the whole Revelation that we read, the 21 chapters of it, was written up and went round to all of the 7 churches. They probably just didn't get their little paragraph. They might have got the whole book. I don't know exactly. But what I do know is we've got it now. And that's the order. So really, us sat here tonight, we're part of the chain, from it's been passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on. And here we are, 2,000 years later. Who would have believed it? Still looking at it and trying to work it out, of which it isn't straightforward, as we keep saying. The other bit I just want to explain is this, because all this is in verse 1, of course, but Revelation 1 verse 1 does say something that I think is important, which is this book, this revealing of Jesus, is about things that must shortly come to pass. In other words, it's things that are going to happen after they were written. Now, do you know roughly when this all happened? When was the revelation of Jesus given to John? Do you know roughly when that was? There's some variances on it, but somewhere between AD 85 and AD 96. So that's roughly when it was. So you got AD 33 when Jesus died and was raised and then went to heaven. So this is a good 40, maybe even 50 plus years later. And John is still alive. In fact, he was the last one out of all the disciples. He was the last one to die. So, and he got the last message. And that's maybe why, he got it as the last disciple of Christ. He got the last message in his dying days on the island of Patmos. Now, when it says things which must shortly come to pass, you might say, well, does that mean the whole book of Revelation is just about things that were going to happen a few years after AD 96? I don't think it means that, because as we've looked at, the book concludes, doesn't it, with, well, what does it conclude with? In broad terms, what's Revelation? With the return of Jesus.
And the setting up of God's kingdom.
And the setting up of God's kingdom on earth. Some people will read Revelation thinking, oh, there's a whole chunk of it about AD 70. But I don't think it is anything to do with AD 70, because it was written 20 years at least after AD 70. And we're told specifically, look on the screen, it's about things that are going to shortly happen. So there were things about to start happening. Therefore, I don't think AD 70 is even referenced at all in Revelation. But equally, it's not just don't think about a few years into, let's say, AD 100 or whatever. Somehow Revelation, I think, takes you from AD 100 roughly up to the days in which we live. In other words, it's covering an enormous spread of history. There's another view, by the way, about Revelation. You can look it all up, that actually it's all about the end. It's nothing to do with ancient times. It's nothing to do with history. It's only to do with the last few years just before Jesus comes back. But I'm going to show you in a minute that I don't think that is the case either. So I don't think it's all about the immediate future, and I don't think it's all about the end. I actually think Revelation is covering everything from circa AD 100 right up to the, well, really not only the days when Jesus comes back, you could also say past that when God comes and dwells on earth with men. And actually you could say that every human being that's ever lived post this being written has lived in some portion of Revelation, somehow in time frame. One other thing, and this is, to me, this is probably the most important point of the lot. In verse 1, it tells us something. All this is in verse 1, right? In verse 1, it says that Jesus, when he sent this message to John by his angel, he signified it. And it's the Greek word semeno, which is on the screen there. And it literally means he symbolized it. So the message that went to John was symbolized. In other words, it was all in symbols. And when you look at it, you think, well, yeah. Even the letters to the churches all sound very symbolic, because as Paul looked at last week, what do you read in verse 12, which sort of starts this conversation about the 7 churches that the letters went to? He didn't see 7 churches. What did he see? He saw 7 golden candlesticks. Now, a candlestick is not a church, because a candlestick is a candlestick, isn't it? A candlestick is not a church, but symbolically, you can say, well, of course, it's a quite a good symbolic picture because it's like a bright light shining, isn't it, to the dark world that's around it. That's our job, isn't it, to try and shine. Equally, it talks about well, I won't go through all of the symbology, but if you look in verse 15, there's somebody like the Son of Man, and he's got feet like fine brass, like they're on fire in a furnace, and his voice sounds like it's of many waters. And in his right hand, he's got seven stars, and in his mouth, he's got a sharp two-edged sword. Is any of that real? Has Jesus got brass feet and a real sword coming out his mouth? Of course he hasn't. So what I'm saying is it starts off symbolic and it stays symbolic. And the reason that that is so important, I think, is when you get into some of Revelation, there's a temptation to convert symbology into literal things that are going to happen. And I'll give you some examples of where Revelation says this is going to happen, and people go, oh, all the sea is going to disappear because it says all the sea is going to disappear. No, no, no. The sea isn't going to disappear. It's symbolic. It says all the stars are going to get wiped away from. Oh, that means all the stars are going to get wiped away from heaven. No, it doesn't mean all the stars are going to get. It's symbolic. We've got to be really careful that we don't look at it and get all excited that these incredible, spectacular, strange things are going to happen because they're not. They're symbolic things that are going to happen. Although, in saying that, there are some pretty dramatic things that are going to happen. So let me give you some idea of some of these things then. So this is in Revelation chapter 6. I'm not going to go through every vision here, right? But just this is sort of where the visions really sort of begin in Revelation. And I've just put on there a picture that I found. And it's a pretty accurate picture of Revelation in chapter 6 talks about these four horses. Does anybody know what these horses are known as? The four horsemen of the apocalypse. And the artist there that's put this picture together, you'd notice all the horses are different colors. So there's a white horse, there's a red horse, there's a black horse, and then that last horse is in the authorized version translated a pale horse, but the original Greek word means a green or sickly colored horse, right? Which is why, if you look at it,
it doesn't look very well.
It doesn't look very well, does it? Now, you don't get red horses unless you watch The Wizard of Oz. And then each of these people that are riding the horses, one's got a bow, one's got a sword, the other one's got scales, and the last one riding the horse is called Death. Now, we don't for 1 minute believe that there are four physical horses, do we? With somebody with a bow, somebody with a sword, somebody with scales, and Death's riding the last one. What I'm saying to you is this has got to be symbolic of something. And we're not looking tonight at what that is, but clearly we've got to try and decode it. Alfie the genius has already pointed that the horses and different coloured horses have already cropped up in the Old Testament. So instead of Googling what do the four men of the apocalypse mean and getting all bizarre answers, you're probably best trying to find out what they once did mean if you can unlock that by going back. And that's sort of what we'll end up doing. Then what you've got to do is overlay these four horses with events that happen after AD 100 and say, have we got any clues in amongst this where we can overlay it on history that's rolling out over time? And that's what people have done who are cleverer than me to try and say, which most people are, it's not difficult, but people have thought, got all this symbology. Let's look at Encyclopedia Britannica. Let's see what history evolved. Look, there's a pattern here. And they've linked it to history. And there's obviously different ways you can link it to history, and that's where the debate comes from. Does this make sense? And I think God has given us all the clues to try and answer it. It's not impossible. I'm not saying it's easy. The revelation is difficult because you're just dealing just with symbology, and that makes it really hard work, and you will get different views. But there we go. Another vision that came up. Hopefully, I've got the right chapter here. So this is chapter 12. And this is, I looked at this image and I thought, well, surely this isn't that accurate because I've never really thought of it like this. But when I read it again, there is the moon in heaven with a woman stood on the moon who is in labor, who has got 12 stars around her head. And in the heaven that she's in, there's a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. All that is in Revelation chapter 12, amongst other things. And when you actually paint it out as a picture, it's pretty bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, not that we're going to do it tonight, try and work it out, but clearly this isn't real. There is not a real woman on the moon with 12 stars around her head with a real dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. It's bonkers to suggest that this is anything. There's nothing real about any of this. So you've got to unlock, well, who's the woman symbolically? What are the 12 stars symbolic? What's the moon symbolic of? What's the dragon? What's the heads? What's the horns? What's this all about? Again, you can unlock a lot of this by looking back. Here's another one. In Revelation 13, and again, you might think somebody just made up the most bizarre picture that, I mean, what is that? But it does describe a beast when you read it that if you were going to paint it would look like that, because it says it's like a leopard and it says it's got a mouth like a lion, but the lion has got 7 heads and also got 10 horns, and it's got feet of a bear. I mean, and it's coming out the sea. Not a real creature, is it? You could see these as symbolic parables, couldn't you, I guess? And in a way, they are. And in a way, I guess it's the same with parables. Jesus spoke in parables because it meant that you had to go away and puzzle it out and work it out. He didn't tell them in plain English. You know, he talked about a sower sowing seed and some falling on the path, and he talked about a rich man who finds a pearl of great price, and he talks about a woman searching the house finding 10 silver coins. But he's putting it in a way that you've got to sit down and work it out. And I suppose this is the ultimate parable. It's the ultimate. This isn't about a sower, which we can understand. This isn't about a woman searching for a lost coin, or a shepherd looking for a lost sheep. This is parables on steroids.
Yeah.
And now but going back to it, as you say, I think it was for filtering process.
Yeah.
Because this all takes effort, and even more effort. So basic parables take some effort. Revelation is off the scale effort, because now I've got to try and decode not a sower sowing seed. I've got to try and decode a leopard with 7 heads and 10 horns. And can my brain cope with that? Am I just going to discount it because it's ridiculous? And really, we shouldn't, because Jesus is saying, I've packaged this up as a message. And guess what? This message came to me from God himself. When you look at that creature, you think, wow, when we did Daniel chapter 7, we read about a beast that was like a leopard. We read about a beast that was like a bear. We read about a beast that was like a lion. And we read about a beast that had got 10 horns. And lo and behold, all of that lot is mixed up in this beast. Now, you can't tell me there isn't some link back to Daniel there, could you? Hence, we did Daniel. So in a minute, we're going to go back to Daniel and remind ourselves as to what exactly is going on here. One more, couple more I was going to show you. This is Revelation chapter 16. I do love this picture because I created something myself when I did a talk on Revelation 16 many years ago, which isn't quite as dramatic as how they've depicted this. But in Revelation 16, there's a dragon and there's a beast and there's a false prophet, right? And it says, out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet came spirits, evil spirits, it says, like frogs. So that's why you've got these green, smoky, spirity stuff with frogs in it coming out the mouth of something that looks like a dragon, something that looks like a beast. And I don't know if that looks like a false prophet, but clearly somebody thought it did. I mean, that's a pretty unbelievable picture, but that is pretty much what it says is in Revelation chapter 16.
Yeah.
But if you come and look at Revelation 16, show you something interesting. Yeah, there it is. Look in verse 13. I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophets. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and unto the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And then in verse 16 it says, where what the battle's called, he says he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. Well, well, well.
Yeah.
Armageddon's there. So this little picture on the screen here, somehow if you can decode this, links to Armageddon, which is fast approaching. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So this one's definitely worth decoding. And in fact, one of the weeks that we're going to do in this revelation is purely on that one verse, i.e. this picture that's on the screen. Because if you can unlock it, it really helps understand what is gathering the kings of the earth to Armageddon. But the other reason I want you to have a look at Revelation 16 is if you have a look, there's all weird stuff that goes on during Revelation 16. So let's have a look. Well, in verse 2, look, there's a vial that's poured upon the earth, and there's a noisome and grievous sore that fell upon men which had the mark of the beast. And then there's another angel, and he pours out his vial upon the sea, and it becomes like the blood of dead people, and every living soul died in the sea. And then you get a third angel in verse 4, and he pours his vial upon the rivers and fountains, and they become like blood. And so it goes on. Now, I've listened to talks on Revelation, and they'll go through this chapter and say, well, this has got to happen, right? So basically, what the sea is going to become like blood, and uh, all people are going to end up with this grievous sore. There's going to be a big plague on everybody, and there's going to be everybody's going to have a mark. So they're going to put a mark on you, and then if you've got the mark, you're going to get this disease. But my point is, this is all symbolic. I don't for 1 minute believe the entire sea on planet Earth is going to become like blood. So you've got to decode it. So there's bits of this that you might say, well, maybe there's a plague. Maybe we're all going to get sores and start scratching ourselves. But I don't think that is what we're looking for. I think what you've got to do, if there's something that sounds plausible that could happen to mankind, as some of these things might do, you've got to balance it with the fact that the verse before says the sea is going to become like blood. Well, is that real? No. Do you think the sores then are real? Well, probably not, because it's surrounded by frog-like spirits coming out of weird stuff, and you've got sea turned to blood. So maybe the sores is symbolic. Right, what's that symbolic of? And you would say, Alfie, well, let's find where sores turned up in the Old Testament. What was that all about?
The plagues.
And it was the plagues, and it was false worship and punishment and so on. So then you say, well, okay, we might not be looking for real sores this time, but what's it symbolic of? So that's what you've sort of got to get to, I think. The last one I was going to show you just in terms of this is Revelation 17, and pretty much this is the last one that's of visions that you get, because after Revelation 17, it's really from that point on talking about how the kingdom gets established. This is pretty much the last vision. There's other bits, but this is pretty much the last vision. And this time, well, once again, there's this scarlet colored beast. I don't know what it looked like, but it's got 7 heads and 10 horns. And sitting on the scarlet colored beast that's got 7 heads and 10 horns is a woman also wearing scarlet. We don't know the name of this woman, and we're not told. What we're told is she's a harlot. which puts her in the highly unpleasant category you would imagine from God's perspective, wouldn't you? Do you think God thinks it's a good idea to be a harlot? Because that's somebody selling a body to multiple people for money. It's about as polar opposite to what God is asking a woman to do, isn't it? As you could get. And this woman is sleeping around, because that's my definition of a harlot, is somebody that sleeps around for money. That's what this woman's doing. And she's got a golden cup in her hand, dressed in scarlet, riding this beast. Now, we are going to unlock all of this at some point. But once again, as I've said, it's all symbolic. I don't think we're looking for a real woman. Oh, there she is. There's a real woman with a golden cup. And look, she's riding a seven-headed scarlet monster around Birmingham. That must be, this is it. This is revelation before our very eyes. No, we're looking for something symbolic. So, with all that said, I thought it might be worth going back to this, back to Daniel, just to remind ourselves a little bit of what Daniel is all about. So I'm just going to play you a little video, and this video is the beginning of Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar had a dream about a statue. And this is the basis for all the prophecies that are going to spin out, if you like, from this vision. And by the way, what am I going to show you? What was it that Nebuchadnezzar first dreamt?
The image.
The image. That's what we're going to have a quick look at. Here we go. thought I'd play it because it gets us off to a good start. So do you remember this is the image, right? That's what he dreamt. Can you remember how we decoded this? Because we said each of these metals of this image, the head of gold, the chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, and the feet part of iron, part of clay, symbolized what?
Different dynasties.
Dynasties or empires, you might say. So who was the head of gold? Which empire? Babylon is the right answer. We know that because on the text on the left in Daniel tells us that. So Babylon is where it began. This is the vision that was given to Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And it was pointing out that he was that empire. But after Babylon came another empire, which was the Medes and the Persians, the main Persian Empire. After the Persian Empire came another empire, the Greek Empire, and all this is spelt out in Daniel, so we don't have to guess any of this. The one that isn't mentioned, but it came after the Greek Empire, was the Roman Empire, the iron legs. And then we sort of said after that, you've got the feet of iron and clay, which is something to do with an ongoing Roman Empire, which must exist at the time of the end, because what happens at the very end of this story?
Stone.
The stone.
Yeah, pushes it. But it's the feet.
It's the
The
feet.
whole thing collapses.
The whole thing collapses.
About the stone, something massive grows, and the stone grows, doesn't it?
You've got it. So the stone is cut out of a mountain without hands, comes down, hits the image on the feet, grinds the whole thing to powder, wind comes, it's all blown away. Then the little stone grows and grows, fills the whole earth. What we said was the little stone coming out of a mountain, cut out of a mountain without hands, was symbolic of who? Jesus coming back. Jesus comes back, and what we're being told is that all the kingdoms of men essentially are going to be ground to powder and disappear to be replaced with this mountain that fills the whole world, which is the kingdom of God here on earth. So when you sort of focus in on it, there's the iron legs. It's the Roman Empire. Categorically, everybody would say it is. I haven't read a single solitary book that says it's anything other than the Roman Empire. So the fourth metal, the iron legs, was the Roman Empire, which started in about 30 BC. But if somehow, Jesus comes and he still hasn't come yet, here we are today, and Jesus, the little rock, still hasn't come back. Therefore, somehow the Roman Empire must sort of continue because the iron is still there in the feet and in the toes. So but it's now mixed with what? In the last days, it's mixed with clay. So you've got to then decode, well, wait a minute, we know iron is the strength of Rome and the empire, but now in the last days, it's mixed in with clay. What's all that about? We dealt with that. When we went through things, and the stone smashes into the feet, and it says in the days of these kings. So it was talking about the 10 toes, and it says the 10 toes in the day are like 10 kings, and the 10 kings, or in the days of these kings, it says, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. So there's clearly some type of empire-y thing happening at the end, and God replaces, I don't believe just this, whatever this latter-day Roman Empire is. I think he's replacing all kingdoms of men with the kingdom of God here on earth. And that's why it says the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. This is where it gets interesting, I think, because you say to yourself, the Roman Empire, Andy, hasn't existed for a long, long time. And in what possible sense is the Roman Empire here today? And why is God even interested in anything to do with the Roman Empire anyway? I mean, why is it that God is sort of focusing in on it? Well, the Roman Empire did come to an end, as we know, and I think it came to an end in about 486 AD, but I'm guessing
I think so, 450.
450-ish, something like that. I haven't got all the dates here. And then after a little while later, there was something else called the Holy Roman Empire. There's little stages in between. I'm giving you the key points. If you go to ChatGPT, which I did last night, and said, can you give me the history of the Roman Empire and onwards and how the Roman Empire has come and gone over the years and its development, it pretty much gave me all the headings that were on my PowerPoint slide from years ago with all the detail of how it actually ended up going and morphing into different things. So from the Roman Empire, which split into two, it went into an eastern part of the Roman Empire and the western part. Then you got the Holy Roman Empire, and that lasted 1,000 years. So there's 1,000 years of history. So from about 800 AD up to 1800 AD, which isn't that long ago, the Holy Roman Empire existed. And then after that, it became the Germanic Empire, or some call it the Prussian Empire. And by the way, the Holy Roman Empire was known as the First Reich, and the word Reich means empire. So the Holy Roman Empire was the First Reich. The Germanic Empire was known as the Second Reich. And then what do you think came after the Second Reich? Then was the Third Reich, which was all about trying to conquer Europe and make a new empire, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's 100.
Yeah.
You got it. The 1,000-year empire. Because what did he want to do? He wanted to replicate the original First Reich, which lasted 1,000 years. But after that, of course, and we've had two world wars, haven't we? Really, and concluding in the worst world war the world has ever seen, the Second World War, with the loss of millions and millions of people. That Europe then realized, well, wait a minute, there's been conquest, and Germany has failed in conquest. What we need to do is to come together and cooperate. We're all different languages. We're all doing different things. We've got to try and work together. So the EEC was born, and the EU, and so on. And this is sort of where we're at the minute. But I think there's another stage still to come. And this is another story for another day. But I do think the European Union isn't the end of the story. I think there's going to be some sort of resurrected Holy Roman Empire centered on Germany again. And there's reasons for thinking that will reappear on Earth. But what I'm trying to say really is what the iron has continued throughout time. It's never completely disappeared, and it's kept evolving and changing. What then happens is in the book of Daniel, you get to Daniel chapter 7, and instead of it being those metals, God says to Daniel, I'm now going to show you a vision. I showed Nebuchadnezzar a vision of a statue with metals. I'm going to show you a vision. And this time it's not metals, it's what? Beasts. But when you read it, it's decoded straight away for you that it's the same story as the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw, but the metals are now converted from metals to beasts. So Daniel saw a lion with wings, and the angel says that's Babylon. And then he saw after that a lopsided bear with ribs in its mouth, and the angel says, by the way, that's Persia. And you think, oh, I see now what you're doing. You're copying the image, but you're showing it me in beasts. And then you get after that this four-headed leopard with wings, which is the Greek Empire. Then you get from that this monster beast, which has got one head but 10 horns. And it doesn't say what it is. It just says it's a horrible beast. He couldn't even describe it. And that was the equivalent of the Roman Empire. And if you read Daniel chapter 7, there's a little horn that comes up and it starts speaking great things, and that's another story. So this, if you like, is, I think, more God's perspective, because you made a good point, Alfie, where you said Nebuchadnezzar dreamt of an image and a statue and saw himself a bit like that. Whereas God doesn't see the empires of the world as great statues. He sees them like beasts, because they don't follow him. They're like beasts that perish, because they don't follow him, these empires, none of them. So here's what it looks like when you line it up. There's Daniel chapter 2. There's Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 2, there's the image. Daniel chapter 7, there's the beasts. There you've got the fourth kingdom with 10 horns. Here you've got the 10 toes, and the fourth kingdom is Rome. At the top here you've got at the top here you've got Babylon. The lion equals the golden head. The lopsided bear is the Medes and the Persians. That equals the silver over there. The four-winged leopard is the Greek Empire. That links over to the bronze the bronze waist and thighs of the image over there. And the iron legs was the Roman Empire. That's what we did. I'm going to rush this in a couple of minutes, but you remember all of this. Now, here's the thing. We're being told clearly, I think, in Daniel, there's a continuing story of the Roman Empire. And there's a beast that's unnamed, but is a terrifying beast. It says in Daniel 7, a terrifying beast, and it's got 10 horns. Now we jump forward into Revelation and straight into the last picture that I showed you in Revelation. Yeah. And now we've got also a terrifying beast, and we've just got more detail. This one's got 7 heads, but remarkably, what's it also got? 10 horns. Now, you can't say to me, this has nothing whatsoever to do with Daniel. This is just, you've got to go and work it out without Daniel. Go and find the answer without Daniel. I don't think you could. That says to me, whatever this beast is with 10 horns is something to do with a Roman Empire-ish thing. Something to do with, and the fact that it comes at the very end, just before Jesus comes back, says to me, could this be something to do with a resurrected Roman Empire at the very end of time? Do you see what I'm saying? And another way of putting it is this. The reason it says 10 kings at the end, if you have are you still in Revelation 17? In Revelation 17, which talks about this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, in verse 7, it says, the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carried her, which has got 7 heads and 10 horns. And if you go and have a look at verse 12, what does it say?
10 kings. Not yet received the kingdom.
Uh-huh. And they have power as kings 1 hour with the beast, and they have one mind, and they give their power and strength to the beast. So there's 10 kings who give their power and strength to the beast. The beast is an empire. So these are individual kings, or you might say nations, that hand over their authority and their sovereignty, you might say, to the beast. But so you've got 10 toes, 10 horns, 10 kings. And I think they're all linked together. Does that sort of make sense? The other thing is when you start really delving into it, and we'll go into it in some detail when we get to this chapter proper, but there in Daniel, you've got the 4th beast. And in Daniel chapter 7, verse 7, it says it's got 10 horns. And in Revelation 17, verse 3, we're clearly told that this beast has got 10 horns. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 21, it says that the 4th beast persecutes the saints. And in Revelation 17, verse 6, it says that the beast persecutes the saints. In Daniel chapter 7, it says that the beast blasphemes God, and this scarlet beast blasphemes. Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, the beast is judged. And in Revelation 17, verse 3, the beast is judged. In Daniel, it says that the saints assist this judgment. And in Revelation 14, it says the saints assist. In Daniel 7, the beast is destroyed by fire. In Revelation 19, we're told that the beast is destroyed by fire. And what I'm suggesting is essentially that on the screen. The legs were the chapter headings. Daniel 7 is some more detail that's giving you more information. And Revelation is now throwing a whole lot of information through symbology about the future. Does that make any sort of sense. Now, here's another one. Now, I found this on the internet and I thought it was a really good, I know it's a bit blurry, but it's the best I could get it in terms of, quality. But I quite liked it because I know he's lying down, but we often draw timelines going along horizontally, don't we? And obviously the image isn't lying down, he was stood up. But if you lay the image down, then you've got a timeline, haven't you?
Yeah.
So there's the Babylonian Empire over here, starting in 612 BC. By the way, none of this is to scale, right? So don't worry about the blocks of almost trying to line it with a human being's body rather than, an actual timeline. So basically, the Babylonian Empire lasted from 612 BC. Then there's the Medo-Persian Empire. Then there's the Greek Empire. Then there's the Roman Empire. As we've already said, the Roman Empire split into an east and a west, which is depicted there on the two legs. And then you've got this revived Roman Empire in the future. There's the lion, look, next to the Babylonian Empire and the gold head. There's the bear, look, next to the silver and next to the Medo-Persian Empire. There's the leopard here, next to the bronze. There's the fourth beast with 10 horns next to the iron legs. They've put here about an antichrist. That's another story. In Daniel chapter 8, there's the ram and the he-goat. That's another story. We looked at that. But what I'm saying is that Revelation is doing this. It's covering from this sort of time period here, which is where when Jesus was alive, the Roman Empire was there. We said that Revelation deals with everything from AD 100 onwards. So let's say AD 100 is around about where that beast is there. Revelation's dealing with everything going forward. It's dealing with all the machinations of the rise and fall, or the fall and rise of the Roman Empire. Who wrote that book? There was a book written by somebody called the Fall and Rise of the Roman Empire. Famous book, but I can't remember who wrote it. But anyway, that's what it's dealing with. Another way of looking at it is like this. It's the same thing. There's the image. I found this. This is a slide that a Christadelphian speaker put together, and I thought, yeah, it looks really good. There's the lion, there's the bear, there's the leopard, there's the fourth beast, and what he's done is expanded it out and said Revelation is dealing with the same sort of thing. I showed you all those images earlier. The dragon in outer space, in heaven, with the 7 heads and 10 horns, with the woman stood on the moon. And then there was this other creature that comes out the sea, who's also got a load of heads and 10 horns. And then the last one in Revelation 17. And what his talk says is what I'm saying. It's just the Roman Empire developing over time. Now, what he did, which is what we're not going to do now because we've got T minus no minutes left, is that he basically showed this slide, and we've probably spend more time on this as the weeks go by, because what Revelation does, it goes from seals to trumpets to vials to thunders. And there are 7 seals, which is like a scroll. And when you get to the 7th scroll, when the 7th scroll is opened up, inside the 7th scroll, there are 7 trumpets. And when you've gone through the 7 trumpets, when you get to the 7th trumpet, inside the 7th trumpet, lo and behold, there's 7 vials. And when you get to the 7th vial, inside the 7th vial, there are 7 thunders. And all of it leads up to the millennium, or the return of Jesus. So it's almost like, that's why we keep saying there's the 7. So you get to the 7th, you open it, oh, there's another 7. You get to the 7th, you find another 7 things. You get to the 7th one of that, and there's another 7 inside. So some people draw it almost like a telescopic thing. There's different ways you can picture it, but there's clearly some amazing pattern going on, isn't there? What this makes me think of a bit, is Jericho. You remember Jericho, they walked around the city for 7 times. But on the 7th time, they had to walk round it. So they walked round they walked round every day once for 6 days. And on the 7th day, they walked round the city 7 times. So God says, I want you to walk around the city for 6 days. One day you walk around the city, the next day you walk around the city, the next day, the next day, the next day, 6 days. On the 7th day, you're going to walk around it 7 times. So on the 7th, there's 7. Exactly like this pattern. And what happened to Jericho on the 7th? The walls came tumbling down. And here's the other interesting thing. As they walked round, there were 7 priests. And what do you think they were blowing? 7 trumpets. And Jericho is symbolic of the empires and the kingdoms of men. Happens to be the lowest city on planet Earth. There's no city on Earth lower than Jericho. It's something like 850 feet below sea level. There's nothing like it on planet Earth anywhere. And there it is in Israel, right next to the Dead Sea. And it's the lowest point on Earth, only about 20 kilometers from Jerusalem, that's up here. Jerusalem's way, way, way above sea level. And here's Jericho down here. And I believe that the destruction of Jericho, with the 7s all around it, is being played out here in Revelation with the end of the kingdoms of men. But here you go. Look, this is the Jericho story. 7 trumpets of Jericho foreshadow the 7 trumpets and 7 bowls of Revelation. They walk round each day, as I've just said, and on the 7th day they march round 7 times. The 7 priests blowing 7 trumpets, and at the end the wall fell down, didn't it? This was the first city that was destroyed, wasn't it, when Israel went in, when the Jews went into the promised land. And what we read in Revelation 16, verse 19, is that the cities of the nations are going to fall at the very end. It's exactly like what happened in Jericho. Israel defeated, didn't they, Jericho? And ultimately, Israel, which is actually God's antidote, not Israel as we know it right now, but the Israel that God's going to set up in the future, really, is going to be the antidote for the entire world, because all the kingdoms of the earth are going to come to an end, and God is going to rule through his son Jesus over the whole planet. Yeah, and that's another part of the story, because of course Rahab, a harlot, was rescued because she turned to God and saved his people, essentially, didn't the spies that went in? And ultimately, that's the sign for us, because we are Gentiles. We're just tiny few little people on the walls of Jericho. And when all the walls fall on planet Earth and there's destruction and horror, we, the Rahabs, the Gentiles who've turned and followed God, are going to be saved, because her bit of the wall never fell. And when they found the ruins of Jericho, which they found, all the rocks and how they fell and amazing miracles, and they've discovered it only in the last few years, they found a bit of the wall of Jericho that still stood. And I believe, and they believe when they found it, the archaeologists, that this is the only remaining part of Jericho wall, and it's still standing. And almost certainly, therefore, I believe is a testament even to this day that the wall still stands that Rahab would have been in all those years ago. I mean, how amazing is that? Yeah, the final picture, of course, of the whole of Revelation is that it's the great city of Jerusalem with God's glory lighting it up, not the darkness of the kingdoms of this world and the false religions and the rejection of God, but actually Jerusalem being the great city with God's glory shining in it, and a new city being built. The cities of man are going to fall. God's going to replace it with his city.